Why do organizations estimate?
In my experience, organizations estimate for several reasons.
I worked in several service-based organizations. How about them?
So the service-based setup is a bit different in my experience, because when you see the iron triangle we used to say, right?
Yeah.
Scope, time and cost. They got to commit all these three to the.
What are the purpose of estimations in agile ways of working?
The purpose of estimations in agile environment.
What would be the way forward for organizations to move away from this and try to embrace the uncertain world?
It depends on the organization, Arun. I'm a great leader. I have all the power, right? That's not going to make somebody a great leader. If we are able to embrace the three things which we discussed, in my experience, 70 to 80% of the problems that we are encountering with agile estimations is going to go away.
Hello everyone, in this podcast, we're going to talk about an interesting question. Why do agile estimations always collide with organization planning? I have Venkat with me. So let me start with a question, Venkat. Why do organizations estimate?
Okay, so it's a very deep question, right? But in my experience, organizations estimate for several reasons. Okay, something that comes to my mind immediately when you asked me, one is they need to communicate to the stakeholders.
Yeah.
The other reason is perhaps budgeting.
Yeah.
They have annual budgets. They got to forecast their budgets. And then perhaps they need to communicate to the customers.
Mm-hmm.
And many companies work in silos, right? So they have different departments. So they need to communicate across the departments when will be done. So they need estimation.
Maybe I have one more question. I worked in several service-based organizations. How about them?
Yeah, so the service-based setup is a bit different in my experience, because I worked in service companies as well. So it works like a client and service model, right? Service provider. So sometimes what happens is the clients will estimate everything ahead and they would pass on the estimations to the vendors. Sometimes the other way around is they would just give a project to a vendor and say when can be done, right? Something can be done in months or in years. So in service companies, it's totally different because it's totally client driven. So they got to go back to the clients with an exact date when something can be completed. So that's also one reason why estimation differs in different setup.
Okay. So in a nutshell, is it safe to say they're trying to give a commitment, which is a timeline, and also a commitment on the budget, and also commitment on what they're going to do?
Yeah, when you see the iron triangle we used to say, right?
Yeah.
Scope, time and cost. They got to commit all these three to the maybe stakeholders. In you can replace the stakeholders in different contexts. In some cases it is stakeholders, some cases it's clients, some cases it is going to be dependent teams. Depends.
Okay.
But as you rightly said, these three variables will come into play and they got to commit these three variables to somebody.
Okay, now let's come to the agile estimations. What are the purpose of estimations in agile ways of working?
Okay, this is very interesting, right? The purpose of estimations in agile environment is going to be a bit different than traditional ways of having estimations in place. So the agile estimation, first of all, it embraces uncertainty.
Yeah.
That's why you see a lot of techniques in agile ways of working is going to be a bit different, right? The second thing is we are going to prioritize value over meeting everything on schedule, right? So it embraces uncertainty and it is going to help you do the planning process frequently, and it is going to prioritize value over schedule.
Okay. So now I'm hearing the term from you, value over schedule. So does that mean we don't put a timeline and say this is the timeline that we're going to deliver value? Is it that way?
No, so not really. If you look at agile ways of working, unlike the traditional environments where you fix everything and you try to pass on the schedule to the different levels and say, I want everything to be done on this time and this is the scope. But when it comes to agile ways of working, I said it's like a manifesto. Value over schedule. It doesn't mean that we don't give importance to the right hand side. It's just that we give more importance to the left hand side, which is value.
Okay.
So I meant we give more importance to what value we deliver to our clients or customers over what is the schedule that we are trying to track and put a tick mark on.
Okay.
Right?
Fair enough.
Both are two different things.
So I also, from my experience, I've seen these agile estimations inherently embraces uncertainty, which is the reality. Right? What's your take on that?
Yeah, see, uncertainty is a reality.
Yeah.
Right? We cannot split the uncertainty and reality into two different coins. See, when I said agile ways of estimations embrace uncertainty, I meant imagine a customer is coming to you and asking, can you deliver everything in a month? You say, okay, I deliver everything in a month. You sign the contract, you pass on to the teams. Now, what if the same customer comes to you after 2 weeks and say, I want different things because there is a market opportunity for me. Can you do this for me? Now, what is your preference? Would you go back to the customer and say, we already signed the contract, we need to keep everything on schedule? Or would you embrace that and say, hey, there is a market opportunity. We need to really take that and swap the scope that you already agreed. That is what going to really make sense in a world of uncertainty. Right? So when I say embracing uncertainty and reality, this is the reality I'm talking. So the reality is going to come on the way and it is going to come often in your schedule. And it is going to challenge your schedule. Hey, you want to keep everything on track or would you like to embrace uncertainty? So, unfortunately, the organizational principles, why do they do estimations, is going to contradict with this uncertainty. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So, that is why the first pillar or the first reason, your question on what is really happening, the first fundamental principle is getting contradicted here.
Okay. The contradiction that we're talking here is that here, the agile estimation, the focus is on value delivery to the customers. You're putting the customer at the center. Whereas in this, in the traditional way of estimations, we are putting the schedule, which is the cost, time, and effort into one box, and then trying to say this is what we're focusing.
Yeah, but if you go on ask organizations, they say, hey, we are putting customer at the center. We got to communicate with the customer the scope, cost, and time. We have been asked. But what is the real help that you can extend to your customer? Right? Hey, if I put scope, cost, and time at the center and we agree on this, there is no opportunity for uncertainty here because we are thinking everything is going to go like the way we plan. So actually what you are trying to do here is in the name of helping your customers, you are actually pulling them into the rabbit hole.
Okay, good. So now that we understood what the contradiction is, what would be the way forward for organizations to move away from this and try to embrace the uncertain world?
It depends on the organization, Arun. So what is that they want to do? Whether they wanted to embrace uncertainty and accept the reality or they wanted to stick to the schedule no matter what. So I have 3 simple tips that I can give it to anybody who's asking me this question. One is embracing uncertainty, which we already spoke.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Number 2, leaders will have to do a lot of work there, moving away from keeping everything on schedule to embracing or accepting the realism. Because we know the reality is going to be uncertainty. That's why I connected these two. The last part is, I'm a great leader. I have all the power, right? That's not going to make somebody a great leader. I have all the power, but I'm going to use none because I'm going to empower my teams to make decisions that's going to be the best possible decision for their customers.
Okay.
So we got to delegate. We cannot keep everything with us. We got to decentralize a few decision makings because the teams are the best people to decide what's good for the customer.
Okay.
So in principle, I think if we are able to embrace the three things which we discussed, in my experience, 70 to 80% of the problems that we are encountering with agile estimations is going to go away.
Okay.
And then the real value comes because when these things are going to go away, it's going to matter less. I'm not saying don't estimate, right? What I'm trying to say is the purpose of estimation, is it contradicting with your scope driven, scope, cost, time, and everything, keeping everything on schedule, or it is going to really support your value delivery?
So in trucks, focus on value delivery. That is going to help you move away from this contradiction, right?
Yes, and it's that hard, as we discussed, in many episodes. It's going to be hard, and I always trust leaders will be the go-to person for this, because in many companies we hear that the teams are told that this is the estimation, we got to do everything on time, on scope, on budget. So the fundamental attribution of why do we do estimates will have to change in agile ways of working. And that's when, in my opinion, it's not going to contradict with why do we do estimates in agile ways of working.
Okay. Thank you for sharing your insights, Venkat. I hope you all enjoyed too. We look forward to hosting you another interesting topic in the coming weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.